Yeah, I mean, that was fun. You'll definitely enjoy meeting her when we get the opportunity for you guys to connect over there.
Yeah, no, exactly.
All right, so we are
So
live.
we
So
are
whenever you want to bring us
live.
in. Yep.
Yes. Hi, I'm Dr. Asha with my co-host Steve Harper with Conversations with Asha and Steve. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Asha?
I'm doing good. This is our live stream, which is also our podcast as well. For those that are listening on audio, we sometimes, every once in a while, whenever I get to talk Steve into pushing the button, we get to see our lovely faces and other people get to interact with us. Isn't that right, Steve?
Yes, yes.
You love
And
it, right?
like you
Yes, you
said, you
love
have
it.
to talk me into it to do it. So
No. So, how are things going over there?
going good. Yeah, I've been staying busy. It's been we just talked last week, had a great conversation
Mhm.
last week, which I really enjoyed. And I looked up and I couldn't believe it's already been a week. I've been
I
that
know.
heads down on a couple of key projects that have really required my attention, but it's been a good productive week. I've got zero complaints in that department. So how about yourself?
No, that's good. You know what? I can't believe this is the third week of March already. I'm like,
It
what is
is.
going on?
Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
crazy. It's really, really crazy. I mean, things are going okay over here, except for the COVID numbers are going up. And so
Yep.
I don't know, maybe, we're still on lockdown, but I'm still being able to be open in businesses. So that's been good. So it's been really busy and really great to reconnect with people. So that's really good.
Yep. I forgot to put our branding up there. So
Oh yeah.
the beautiful aspect of live streaming. Well, it has been an interesting week because I've gotten to speak to your country,
Yes, this is
you
the
being
second
over in the
time this week.
Netherlands. I was on
Yeah.
with Pelpina Tripp this past week, and she's right in your neck of the woods. So she and I did a recording last week for my podcast
Yeah.
and put that up on YouTube. And then she wanted to interview me on a live stream for LinkedIn to talk
Yeah.
about the Ripple. And so it was a lot of fun, but I feel like I'm like almost over there, right, with you guys because I see you so much in the Netherlands.
It's a sign, Steve.
Yeah.
It's a sign. Something is signature. And you know what? For those of you that didn't catch it, be sure to catch that. Pelpina is really great. I've never met
Yes.
her personally. Like I've connected with her indirectly,
Yep.
but she is fantastic and the work that she's doing is wonderful. And I really loved it, Steve, because you've known her for a really long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We originally met. Actually, I just reached out to her on a question because she had been on a show called Geek Beat. That was one of the first
Oh,
live
yeah.
streaming,
Oh my
daily
God. Yeah.
shows that was out there
Yeah.
before this was a big thing. Like actually, there wasn't platforms that were doing it. YouTube wasn't
Right.
big yet. It was on iTunes. That'll tell you how far
Oh
back
my
that was.
God. Yeah.
And sometimes it went live, sometimes it was like delayed because YouTube or not YouTube, iTunes had issues. It was
Yeah.
kind of interesting, but she and I had connected originally, and then she had hit me up about coming in and being interviewed for a Dutch website that she was doing interviews
Okay.
for called Frank Watching at the time.
Okay.
And she interviewed me about the book and the concept back then when it was the second edition back in 2012. And so we were at South by Southwest that year. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
but
that's awesome.
stayed in contact with her all this time, so it's been fun.
Yeah, no, that's great. But those of you that, you know what, maybe we can drop a link in the comments for people to catch it again. Steve, catch the
Oh
replay.
yeah, I've got to find it.
Yes. That's fine. But definitely for those that didn't catch it, so that way they can catch it really easily. So, but
Yeah.
I'm excited about today's topic because I want to talk a little bit about the background of the topic as well. Can't mention any names or anything like that, but I did get permission to talk a little bit about it because this came from a client of mine about how to build or rebuild trust once you have, things have happened, relationship, whether it's personal or professional. In his case, it was a professional kind of trust that was broken. And whether he should be working with people. So he worked for a company for over a decade and had a team of people that he worked for. And one of the managers that was in his company worked very closely with him, but was really, after a while, he figured out was really sabotaging everything. So he would take this manager would take over his ideas and make them his own, and also kind of sabotage him in the sense of bad mouthing him to the big boss. And he didn't realize it at first, but he just noticed kind of like this attitude building up in meetings and stuff. And he's like, "What is this?" He wanted to get out on his own anyway. Eventually, he ended up leaving that company and starting his own company. He's very successful. But that same person has now come back to him. Like, I think it's been like 7, 8 years ago now.
Wow.
That same person has come back to him and tried to get back in touch with him and wants to kind of not, he hasn't come out and said it yet, but really is kind of leading up to the fact that he wants to work with him again in his company.
To come to work for him.
Yeah. So he's just like,
interesting.
What in the world am I supposed to do with this? Because I don't trust this person as far as I can throw them. But at the same time, he's like, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it because we did have a good working relationship. So that's the backstory of why this topic came up for us to discuss, Steve. So
that's really interesting. So they did have previously a pretty decent working relationship. What was the challenge with, relative to trust though? If they had that good working relationship, was there something that was kind of pivotal that kind of caused that thing to break apart, or what was the
big thing that caused it to break apart was the fact that even though they worked really well together, it was not until he started realizing that at the bigger meetings, there were ideas that he himself had that were being, being credited to somebody else, just flat out credited to somebody else. And also there was this tension between the big boss and him, which he had never had. And that was growing over time. And so then he realized, and he confronted him on it. He said, listen, I'm not going to share my ideas with you anymore. And it for him, that was his time to leave. Because he thought, if I can't just freely do my job here, what am I doing here? I might as well start out on my own. So that's what led to that.
Which he did, and obviously was successful, right? So now this guy is coming back into the fold saying, hey, look, I recognize how great you are, but now I need a job, or
exactly.
And so the real question is, hey, is that something, that he should consider?
Exactly.
Or can he get over the trust factor, right? That's been broken, and how do you get past that, right? So
how do you get past that?
That's kind of an interesting, segue in terms of the background in terms of why we're talking about this, because how many times in our lives, both personal and professional, have we had someone that's let us down, or, broken that trust by either, like in this situation, taking credit for ideas that are not their own, or, maybe doing something to undermine your standing or your value within a company or a team. I know I've had those situations happen, and it's not comfortable, and it's challenging. And it's also really interesting that this individual is even contemplating the possibility of kind of rekindling this relationship, especially if it kind of broke apart because there was trust broken.
It is. You know what? The thing about it is that he worked for many years trying to forgive and forget. Like, he wanted to not forget, because he remembers what happened, but just to forgive. I think the biggest thing, as we were kind of, diving a little bit deeper in our sessions together, was that it's that the other person, he respects the other person for their abilities, their capabilities for doing a good job. But it's the person, it's the the trust issue, that whole thing, the integrity part, that I think that's why he has this question mark. He's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I missing an opportunity? And so it's been very, very interesting to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mr. Patino, who I used to coach his son in soccer, is kind enough to add a comment on this. Hard work and time gains trust. Trust can be destroyed in seconds, though. And that's absolutely correct. I mean, we've seen that, for sure. And this individual has as well. And so it's kind of interesting, I don't know what the outcome was of your conversation with this person, or if it's still an ongoing work in progress in terms of how this individual is, going to proceed. But it's challenging, right? Because you want to give that individual the credit because they have that technical expertise or that background that could benefit. Sounds like the only reason he'd be considering it is because this individual has some value to bring to his current company. And so it's kind of like, should I be, setting those personal feelings aside and looking at the, the business objectives And I find, in a lot of times, especially in work, when you see people that,
Mhm.
will tell you one thing, but do something completely different,
Mhm.
it's hard for that leopard to change their spots,
It really is. Yeah.
uh, and there are times, and I've been in situations where I've worked with, organizations, either I've been consulting or coaching with an executive
Mhm.
team. And I generally find that a lot of times you have those individuals that if they backstabbed you once, they'll backstab you again. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of not if, it's a matter of when.
It's a
And
matter of when.
that can be tough because
Yeah.
sometimes people make mistakes, right? Some
Yeah.
people, especially in a corporate environment, in an effort to gain notoriety or recognition,
Mhm.
sometimes maybe don't play by the rules, trying to, maybe take a little more credit for an idea they maybe
Ex
shouldn't have had, or maybe it
exactly.
wasn't completely theirs, or
Yeah.
in their efforts to get to that next level, try to do things by their actions that they don't in the moment see that they're damaging, those relationships,
Right.
and really the trust that people have in them. And so there's on one hand, you look at it and say, was that one of those situations where the person didn't
Mhm.
really understand or know that they were doing what they were doing? And you have to determine whether that's, something that they've grown from, or
Yeah.
are mature enough to have that conversation now, or is it something that's kind of inherent to their character, right? Like you said, is that
Yeah.
part of their their DNA makeup? Will they do
Yeah.
whatever is necessary to, gain survival if necessary, to
Exactly.
the trust potential could be broken again in the future. It's
Yeah.
hard to figure those things out because those are
It
challenges.
is. It is, Steve. I do wanna share with you, the outcome is already taken
Oh,
place,
good,
okay? Because
good.
what happened was, we kinda went through it, and I was just like, "Okay, you know what? Write it down. Write down what are the reasons why you would hire this person." I mean, just
Yeah.
treat it as somebody that's coming to apply to you, brand new, whatever. And I
Yep.
said, "And then check in with your gut. What is your gut feeling telling you? Like, what is that?" And it was interesting. So what he did, he decided to invite him for an interview at the company, okay? So he did that. And in that, what ended up happening was is that as the guy was leaving, so he did the interview went great, like everything was great. And he still had like this kind of uneasy feeling. And he literally
Mhm.
thought to himself, he said, God, I would just love to have some clarity on this. About half an hour later, he got a phone call from a customer that happened to be in the parking lot at the same time that this guy was leaving, who knew him from the previous company. Okay.
Ah,
And he said, I just wanted to check in with you. I just had a question about my one of the items that we were working on." But he said, "I don't know if maybe I was seeing things, but wasn't I could have swore that I saw that guy
wasn't it Bob?
in the parking lot as I was leaving. Is he working for you, or does he work? What is going on?" And it was that opened up his eyes. At that moment, he thought, no, this is not gonna happen. I'm
Yeah.
Because that customer said to him, he said, "That guy's a snake." I mean, he just went on and on because the customer didn't
Wow.
know what he was doing. He just went on. He said, "Oh my goodness." He said, "I really was hoping that you're not doing business with this guy because I need to really reconsider us working together." I mean, that's how strong it was. And he was just like, Asha, if I can't get a clearer sign than that, I don't know what is. So he just that was it. And he had the conversation. He said, "You know what? Yes, you do have qualifications, but at this time, I do not think that you're a good fit for my company." So,
Interesting. Yeah. Um,
yeah.
Patino says you can always judge a person by the way
Yes.
they treat other people.
Yes.
Absolutely. To use that comment as kind of a segue for a story that I had from a friend of mine that
Mhm.
he used to be in the executive team for a major accounting firm. And one of the things
Mhm.
that they would do is you always have these bumper crop kids that are coming out of college, or young people that are coming out of
Mhm.
college, and they're looking at bringing them into the firm. And what they would do is they would throw these events, and it was like a big happy hour thing, right?
Mhm.
And it's kind of interesting because they would take all of the normal people that somebody might encounter coming into the building, like the front door security guard, somebody that was tending
Right.
to the elevator, somebody that was in the reception area, and
Mhm.
somebody that was a waiter. What they did was they put all the executive team in these roles,
Ah,
And
Oh, I
they
love
let
that.
those people who were, generally in those jobs day to day
Mhm.
become the executives. And what they did
Oh,
was
that's
they paid
great.
attention to how people treated them as they came into
I
this event.
love that.
And
Oh
so
my
what
god.
was really interesting was that you could tell a lot by that person's character
Mhm.
by how they interacted with each of these roles. Like, somebody saying good morning or in this case, it was a happy hour event. Good evening, welcome to the building, welcome to the company or whatever.
Mhm.
And a lot of these people, and I remember this individual telling me, wouldn't look them in the eye, didn't,
Mm,
wouldn't even be bothered to raise their head from their phone. But the
right.
moment that they felt like they were in the little, kind of conference room break
Right.
area where they were having this event and they thought they had to impress the executives, their entire personas changed, right? They were
Mm,
very outgoing, very friendly because
right.
they knew that they were sort of being watched in that capacity. But
Yeah.
they did that as a test to see how people would respond and react to other people that they would consider beneath
I
their
love that.
station in life. And they made a lot of decisions in the hiring process throughout that. And I don't remember if he told me that they kind of reveal that at the very end of the night or not.
Mhm.
But I do know in one instance, they had this top flight candidate that was, really, really, really on board. They
Mhm.
wanted every ticked all the boxes
Right.
until that event and how he treated
Oh
somebody
god.
like they
Yeah.
had a test of some sort, like there was a coat check or something and they gave
Mhm.
him the wrong number or kept screwing up on purpose to see how he would respond and
Ah,
react. And you
oh
can
my
almost like
god.
kind of think about it like, it's just these situations that come up in life where
Yeah.
we're in a kind of a situation where we're waiting on somebody to give us something and then we got to get somewhere or whatever. So
Yeah.
this person was intentionally delayed and the annoyance factor just kept bubbling up and
It just kept
creeping
on
up.
going up and up and up. Oh
Yeah.
my
And it
god.
turned out that the person that was actually delaying this individual from getting into
Yeah.
the event and now was starting to be treated poorly would end up being that person's boss.
Oh my god. I love that, Steve. I
You
love
know,
that concept
It
because
it is
oh,
interesting because you look at those things and
yeah.
like I said, a leopard generally doesn't change their spots. And so
Yeah,
you find that if you can act a certain way when people are watching, how do you act when nobody's watching? And
exactly.
I think it ties into this trust factor, right? At
Yeah.
the end of the day, when you think about it, because Jose had said that, and he's got to go back to work. But thanks, Jose, for
Have a
joining.
good
That was
day.
awesome. Great show. Wish I could stay back to work. I
Aw,
go,
thank you for
bye.
joining. Have a good great day.
Appreciate that. Yeah. I realize that every time we put these out on podcasts, we're talking about these comments, but we don't read them. People have told me
Oh,
like,
that's
"Hey,
true.
what was the comment?" I'm like, well, go check out the YouTube channel. But
You know,
we do
it's
need to tell them for our podcast listeners that don't watch us on video
yeah,
or on the live stream. But as you look at the topic of trust, that's a big factor, right?
it
And so
is.
going back to your, individual that you were talking about, them going with their gut was a good thing, but also having that sort of revalidation by the
Yeah.
customer who also
Yes.
obviously had a bad experience with this
Yeah.
individual. It's kind of like, yeah.
You
How
dodged a
many, and I,
bullet.
and I tell
Yeah.
people this all the time, how many people are not telling you about the people that you surround yourself with,
Yep.
that they're not trustworthy or they're not
Yep.
the highest ethics that they can be? And what is that doing to your personal and professional brand by associating yourself with them?
That's very true. But you know what, Steve, what do you do when someone doesn't want to listen to it? You know?
Well,
Or
well,
doesn't
so
want to change it? Like they're
they,
aware of
they,
it. They're
they
like, oh yeah, I know, but
so like if let me make sure I understand what you're asking. So if it was a client who says, yeah, I know, but this person's technical expertise or what they bring to the
mhm,
company is still good.
yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, something like that, that what would you do in that
Yeah.
case, you know?
I mean, it's one of those things that you have to look at and you have to say, hey, look, if that's your gut and you think that the value of whatever this person brings to the table
Right.
far and away outweighs what the potential havoc that they may cause,
Yeah.
then hey,
And hey,
go forward.
yeah,
That's also a gut instinct on their part. Maybe they do
it
see
is.
something that we don't see from the outside because we don't know that person. We don't know their
Yeah.
circumstances. I've seen a lot of people, especially in coaching relationships, that really don't even understand who they are at their core. They feel like
Yeah.
they have to play a role and they
Okay.
have to act a certain way in certain circumstances. And the challenge with that is you could say that's lying, right? You're not being
Yep.
truthful in that capacity. But I do think it's human nature to try and adapt around environments that we have. And so you could
Yeah.
easily say, look, it's a black white issue, and if you're one way and you're acting a different way, then you're not being truthful, so you're not a valuable contributor. I do think that for me personally, it's taken me a long time to get
Mm-hmm.
comfortable in my own skin and what I do out there in the world, and to be myself in a way that feels authentic,
Yeah.
and not have to feel like I have to adapt based on environments or who I'm faced with or who I'm talking
Exactly.
to, etc. And so I do think that there is a certain element there that you have to give people a little bit of a pass to say,
Yeah.
is that the case? Right. So in this instance, if somebody was to push back and say, well, I know what you're saying, but I still think that, they bring more value. I
Yeah.
guess time will tell, right? If that's
Exactly.
true.
Exactly. I mean, I think you bring up a really good point there, Steve, because that authenticity is tough. It's tougher for some people to learn that they don't always have to adapt and adjust. I've had to deal with that a lot. Actually, it's kind of funny, when my book came out a few years ago, Authentic Alignment, I
Yep.
got some major criticism from a trusted friend to
Oh,
question me on my authenticity. And
really?
yeah, oh my God, that was real. And I was just like, what? Like, I was really taken back. But then I realized, and we had our conversation. And then later on, I said to him, I said, interesting. I said, I said, it rubbed me the wrong way, the way that you approached me about it. And at the same time, I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I have been evolving over time to really find out who that authentic self is, to express it into the world. And I said, so you may think of me in a certain way as a certain past version of myself, but I have evolved in that. And so, yeah, this is my true self, coming up and out into the world. And it was very interesting. He, I appreciate that. I'm very grateful for that coming up, because I realized in this, and this is where I think that we can kind of give people the benefit of the doubt, when people are working on themselves and they're doing things and they're evolving and changing. There are certain things that will change. However, like you were saying, their character, the things that they value,
Yeah.
probably won't change all that much,
Yeah.
um, at the core, really.
Well, that's
So
interesting. And it was good that you took their feedback or criticism really at the end of the
yeah,
day, and you were able to kind of utilize that as a springboard and learn from it. And how they
exactly.
may have viewed you in the past had nothing to do
Yeah,
with who you are in the present, right? And the
exactly.
fact that you stuck up for it in that perspective, I think is really good. I do think that when you
Yeah,
get called on the carpet on something that you either said or did that maybe probably isn't in alignment with who you are right now
right.
or whatever, right? That's also part of your authenticity, because at the
True.
time back 3, 5, 10, 20 years ago, you might have been
Exactly.
authentic in that moment based on what you knew and what your
Yeah,
experiences were at that point. But we're really complicated creatures. And so we
we
evolve.
are.
And that does bring up the fact that, it's one of those challenges that, I just said, hey, a leopard generally doesn't, switch their spots. I
Yeah,
think that kind of does, it gets complicated, because at the end of the
yeah.
day, you do have to look at all of those circumstances. But at the end of the day, if you're evaluating how that relationship should be or how you should
Mhm.
proceed with it, whether it's a hiring decision, whether it's
Right.
somebody you're welcoming back into your friends group, or in the case of family, right? And
Yeah.
those very complicated, sometimes
Mhm.
challenging environments, you have to really go with what is important to you at this juncture, and how much you're willing to give that person another chance, and
Yeah,
there's just going to be some environments that I think at the end of the day that you just have to go with your gut, right? Is this a good
yeah,
fit for me? Is this person somebody that I'm willing to take a chance on? Because at the end of the day, we already know that at one point there was something that you didn't like, that really
mhm,
gave you pause, and that trust was potentially broken by their actions or
right,
their words or whatever commitments.
exactly.
And you have to kind of come back and say, hey, am I willing to put myself back up on the plank to take that dive again?
Yeah, one of the things, Steve, it's so funny. I'm just thinking about something that my mom always used to tell me, like whenever the past comes knocking at your door, just don't answer it. She always used to say that, because, and it stuck with me over the years, because I'm just like, huh, yeah, and what she meant by that, what she was trying to imply was just like, listen, just because you gave your time and your attention and your presence to somebody in the past, and maybe they didn't respect it, maybe they hurt you, maybe they, whatever, deceived you, whatever it is, it does not mean that they hold the same, that they have to hold the same place in your present or in your
Yeah.
future. And
Yeah.
so you don't have to go there at all. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you're a mean person. You can lovingly say, hey, you know what? Sorry, or just don't even say anything, just not even respond, because it'll allow them to do whatever they need to do, go on their way, and they don't have to take up space. But this is where the challenge is with that. I
Yeah.
find with family.
Oh,
Family is one of the hardest things, I
yep.
think, to really, because there's so much complication involved. There's so many feelings involved. There's history there and sentiment. That's a tough one.
Yeah, and a lot of those relationships are, what your present day judgment is based on, how you grew up with a sibling
Yep.
or
Yes.
those family dynamics from, years past. And those are hard to get over, right?
Yep,
But
they are.
I'm a big believer that you look at it and you say, hey, look, I make decisions today based on the facts that I know today. And I
Mhm.
look at people for the actions and the approach that they take in every aspect of their life. And
Yeah.
family are no different. In fact, actually, family in that dynamic is probably a little bit easier because
Mhm.
people don't feel like they have to put on any airs. It's amazing. They're
That's
stripped down to
true.
their core in most cases. So
Yeah.
when you have a sibling or a cousin or, a
Mhm.
close family member, even a parent that acts a certain way, it's generally probably who they are as a core. And you've
Yep.
gotta ask yourself, is that somebody that I want to surround myself with? Is that somebody that I want to be, go through the trauma and the drama of hanging out with
Exactly.
them? And, a lot of times I think that that's a big challenge because it is, I've seen it in my own coaching clients. I mean, how many things that maybe you had a very challenging childhood with a parent or a sibling
Mhm.
that didn't believe in you or, constantly put you down or whatever the issue might
Yeah.
be. And how much of what your present day is still being measured through that yardstick from
Yes.
yonder, right? And those
Yeah,
those things are really, really hard to get over, and they're challenging.
they are.
I always tell my coaching clients, however, that to the people that you surround yourself with,
Mhm.
that includes your family, are they making you better? Or are they making you worse? And
Exactly.
if they're making you worse, is it because of the stories you're telling yourself, or is it because the
Right.
actions that they actually are taking? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times, to be fair, sometimes those actions that memory is a weird thing, right? It goes way back.
It is.
Sometimes we base ourselves on those previous filters that we had, and sometimes we have to ask ourselves, hey, am I judging this situation through present
Mhm.
day or through the past? And
Yeah.
sometimes you can get over those things and sometimes you can overcome it. But once that bond, especially at a family member, that
Yeah.
bond of trust is broken, those are going to be
Right.
some of the toughest ones to ever get over. Right.
Yeah. You know what that is? It takes a while to heal that up. And one of the things I've learned over the years, and especially with family, is that I don't really pay attention too much to the words that they say, but I definitely pay attention to their actions.
Yep.
Because I have learned, some people can talk a really, really good talk and say that they're going to do certain things, but for whatever reason, they're disconnected with their integrity or whatever it is. And
Yep.
I just watch what the actions, and for that, then I kind of adjust my response on how invested I get on an emotional level with the interaction. If I know, okay, not that they can't surprise me and actually follow through or anything like that, but it is, I'm just not expecting that. So that way I can just kind of keep doing my thing, let them do their thing. And it's not so much of a drama then if I have to
Yeah.
interact with that person. But it is hard. I agree with family. It's hard because it takes those kind of wounds that happen from the broken trust
Yeah.
cut deeper.
Yeah.
I feel, they really do.
They do, and they leave scars, and those
Yes,
scars are
they
not
do.
easily healed. Right.
No,
And
no.
those things are challenging. So,
Yeah.
family, I mean, we could talk for hours about family dynamics and
Yes,
issues
we
there.
do.
I mean, you've got it,
Yeah.
I've got it. We're still going through it.
Yeah.
But what about how that level of trust extends to a brand or
Yeah.
an experience from, a product or service that you've
Yeah.
had? What are your thought processes there? What happens if a company lets you down? Do you give them
Yeah.
another shot? Do you continue to invest your money with them, or
Yeah.
take advantage of their product or service? I mean, how do you generally
Yeah.
look at that? Because the reason I ask it is typically how you give people or companies like that, product or service, a pass. It's pretty indicative of how you may handle those situations in your personal and your professional life and those relationships.
Yeah. No, that's true, Steve. One of the things that I always look at is that if something has really gone wrong, I like to communicate. That for me, that's the
Hmm.
biggest thing. I want to see, like, where did it go wrong? Was I unclear in my communication? Was somebody on my team unclear in communication?
Yeah.
Were the expectations not set, from the get-go? And I really like to look at that first and address that head on, so that way we can see exactly what the problem is. I more than likely do give, it depends on how devastating something is,
Yeah.
but I do give another chance based on the fact of the outcome of that kind of conversation. And I want to be very, very clear on what to expect from us, what to expect from them, and that kind of thing, and make sure, um, that's kind of my approach. But there
Yeah.
have been cases that I have not done that. I have to be honest with you. Okay.
It's
I've
just
just
one and done.
sympathized.
Yep.
I know exactly. How about you, Steve? What's your take on that?
It's really funny because talking about this actually brings up a thought that I had last night. We went to a restaurant for dinner with the family, a
Mhm,
place that we've had great meals at before, but the service
mhm,
has been less than ideal. There's
mm,
been an issue, but it's convenient and it's a location that really was sort of a good spot for us to have. My son was leaving to go back to New Mexico for a couple of weeks, and
mhm.
just a good place to have a send off. And
Yeah.
so we went there, and it was really interesting. Not only getting seated was a challenge and a problem, which we'd had
Mhm.
previously, but then as we were sitting down to eat, our appetizers came out before our drinks did, and a little bit off, but they were busy.
Yeah.
You can kind of understand. And
Yeah.
then we finished our drinks, we finished our appetizers, and then we just sat there and sat there and sat there. And then nobody came. Finally, when somebody noticed, right?
Yeah.
The waiter, he's like, well, it's not really my table, but let me just take this order. And
Yeah.
they screwed it up. Right. And it's not a super expensive restaurant, but it was, it's a pretty
Yeah.
expensive dinner for, my son had his girlfriend there. And so there were five of us, and, not
Yeah.
insignificant investment of time and effort,
Right.
but it was an experience that lasted way longer than it should have, predominantly because they forgot food. I actually had just
Oh
ordered a
god.
salad, like the most simple, easiest salad you
Oh
could
my
possibly
god.
imagine, and everybody was done before mine ever arrived, right? They
No.
never apologized. They never really took advantage of, an
Yeah.
opportunity to say, "Hey, look, let me make it right. I'll take this off your menu." And I
Exactly.
really wasn't looking at that like that. My wife, Kathy, of course, was like, she was incensed. She was like, "This is ridiculous,"
Yeah.
and no reason that this should be happening. And then you started like checking back in, like every time we've been here, we've had something, right? Somebody either had the
Yeah.
wrong dish, or, the way that they asked it to be prepared was incorrect. And I kind of joked. I said, really, this is like the fourth or fifth time we've been to this restaurant. It's maybe indicative of how they operate, right? And
Yeah.
how they do, because we kind of paid attention to a few other tables. There were problems with checks. Somebody didn't get their drinks, whatever the issue
Right.
was. And I said, but we're the ones to blame here, right? we
Yeah,
we
because
keep
you went
coming
back.
back. And at some juncture, you have to say enough
Yeah.
is enough, right? It's
Exactly.
whether it's poor service at your mechanic or at a
Mhm.
restaurant or the airlines you choose, if you
Yep.
continue to be abused,
Yep.
it's generally because somebody's really not minding their ship correctly. And I
Exactly.
think, and you touched on it just a second ago, like with your business and what you do, if something goes bad, you want to know
Mhm.
about it, and you want
Yeah.
to either empower your employees to fix it, or you want to be, as the business owner and entrepreneur, you want to be brought up to speed so that you can pick up the phone and have mea culpa, right? Hey, we screwed
Yep.
up. I really
Exactly.
apologize. This needs to be fixed. A lot of times, I think companies that know they're screwing up, but they don't have the intention behind, trying to get better
Yeah.
or to fix it, and
Yeah.
therefore
Exactly.
they don't, and they make no efforts, and of course they break that trust, that really,
Yeah.
solid amount of trust that a customer has to pay you money for whatever product or service you have. And I think whether
Exactly.
you're in the restaurant industry or you're in a software company like I am, or
Yeah.
you're you're in a healthcare like you are, those things are pretty key. And there's a value that that customer perceives in whatever they're doing to invest with you. And when you screw up, you got to own it, and you got to try and make it right as best as you can. And so I think the organizations that don't, when you as a customer or a consumer don't see that the effort is being made, then stop. You vote with your almighty dollar. Stop taking advantage of the product or service.
Yeah, it's very true. And you know what? It comes down to communication. And some people can't read your minds.
Yeah.
I mean, businesses can't read your minds. You can sit there and be very upset. But some people just don't see those cues. They don't even look at it. They don't even notice it. So we've got to be able to use our words and communicate. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it in a disrespectful or rude way, but communicating what the disappointment is better than not saying anything, because otherwise you can go for years. You can go for years starting to resent somebody in any of those relationships, whether it's personal or professional. And, you just leave, with a very bitter taste in your mouth.
Well, and you mentioned something that's really important. I always tell people, resentment is the super secret promise of revenge. I will get you back. You may not know when, you may not know where, but it is, I'm going to get you back.
That's
and
true.
Especially when it comes to breaking the trust between that common bond of, a company or an organization. They say this in customer service training all the time. People will tell 10 times more people a bad experience than they will tell people a good experience. Right. So it's one of those challenges that people run into for sure. Hey, Asha, I think you froze up here. Let's see if Dr. Asha is frozen up here for just a second. She's got some Wi-Fi issues there, but we'll continue on. Miss Williams, thank you. You teach people how to treat you, so it's important to exercise wisdom in specific situations. Some things can be let go while others need to be addressed. I think that's absolutely accurate and true. All right, I'm going to pull Asha off here for just a second and see when she comes back. Sorry about that, guys. The beautiful aspect of live streaming. Hey, Asha, are you back with us? Nope, she's just popped off. So that's an excellent comment there, Ms. Williams. I appreciate that. You do teach people how to treat you, and it's really critical in terms of those aspects when you're trying to educate people in that process. It can be a challenge for sure. Hey, Asha, you're back. Oh, but you're unmuted now. So
you can't hear me. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Oh my God, that was so weird. I'm like, Steve.
Well, it's kind of funny. You'll have to go back and watch that video because you had your Cheech and Chong moment there because you were like, dude. Oh. And you were just stuck there like you were.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Okay.
It was really, it was quite the funny still that you left us with. It was good. It was really good. So, hey, what's your comment on Miss Williams's comment here? Because before we move on and start to wind down a little bit, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Others need to be treated. Yeah, I agree. You do teach people how to treat you. And from the get-go, it's very important. If somebody says something, if somebody does something, and I agree with her. Some things you can just let it go. You can just be like, okay, whatever. If it happens again, I'll say something. But the sooner that you speak up and the sooner that you teach people how to treat you, the better off. The better off the relationship, right? The foundation is strongly there.
Well, and going back to the original conversation that started this topic, right? You're a client talking about this other individual. Let's say that customer hadn't seen that person in the parking lot and this person was contemplating still hiring them. Yeah. One of the things that I think is, and it's really indicative of, it's a fearful conversation to have, but if you run into a situation where you are thinking about bringing that person back into your life, into your network, into your friends group, or bringing them back into a professional environment, somebody that's broken the trust, has upset the apple cart. One of the most cathartic things that you can do is to say, look, dude, here's what I am thinking right now. I appreciate, the opportunity that you're coming back and you're interested here in what I'm doing and what I'm building, but I've got to be 100% honest with you because trust goes both ways. I need to let you know something that really has concerned me. This is, your actions of prior really caused conflict. You may or may not have been aware of it, or maybe they are aware of it and it's a particular situation, so that you basically
Right.
say, hey, look, this happened and this caused a
Mhm.
conflict. Actually, one of the funny things about this situation for myself is I had a guy that I brought into a company that I was, leading the effort for at one point,
Mhm.
and he backstabbed me. Like, he
Oh,
completely backstabbed me,
right.
and it was at a time where I was going to be leaving the company anyway, but I've
Mhm.
known this guy a long time, and all he was
Yeah.
trying to do was to better his position. So when I did leave,
Yeah.
he was hopeful that he could take over as, the general manager slash CEO of this
Right.
organization. And when he realized that, we were no longer connected, and had really nothing to necessarily do with him on a
Mhm.
professional level, he started reaching out, and he's like, look, in today's world, in this technical environment that we're in,
Mhm.
it's, dog eat dog world.
Right.
I'm like, no, it's
No.
really not. When you do things
No.
that uh, really go above and beyond to create
Mhm.
conflict and issue, that problem says a lot more about you than it does me. But my
Yep.
reaction is, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But he wanted to go to lunch. He wanted to talk about it. He
Yep.
wanted to have a opportunity to say face to face how sorry he was that he had done some of these actions. And I simply just agreed not to. I said, look,
Yep.
I wish you well. I hope you do well in your career.
Exactly.
I hope you learn from this experience, because you totally, totally, screwed yourself.
Yep.
And you will unfortunately never be able to count on me for a professional reference or
Yep.
any kind of true friendship ever again.
Yep.
So stop calling me, stop trying to, make it right, because unfortunately, there's
Mm.
no going back. Right.
Yeah.
And you do
Exactly.
have to make those decisions for yourself at some juncture,
You
because
do.
when situations like that happen, I'm a big believer. And again, I know that we've talked about, you got to give people a second chance sometimes, but
Mhm.
sometimes when you're old enough to know better, sometimes
Yeah.
the action is just too big to overlook.
Yeah.
That says something as well, right?
I think it does, Stephen. Also, I think that if someone is not in alignment with your values, you know it. As you get older, you get wiser, a little bit wiser anyway. You start to realize some cases, some people get really wise. Me, not so much, but but
Me either.
no, but you do start to realize, hey, well, you know what? I value integrity. I value peace. I value when you start to know your values and your belief system is strong enough, then it doesn't really take much to know to like, okay, you know what? Not going there. Let's just not even, entertain this or that. Yeah.
I also think, if you're a business leader and you're looking at somebody that you feel like maybe we made a bad call, maybe we made a
Yeah.
bad decision, or maybe this person isn't somebody that I could trust to mind the store while I'm gone, right?
Right.
There is also a school of thought that I often,
Mhm.
suggest people get it out there. Say,
Yeah.
look, based on your actions, or in some cases your reactions,
Yeah.
you have proven to me to not be 100% up and up. And you don't have
Yeah.
to call them a liar. You don't have to say you've broken the trust
Exactly.
yet, but we're definitely headed down a path that
Mhm.
potentially could be a problem. And
Yeah.
that path doesn't have a good ending in most cases, right?
Right.
So, maybe you're not aware that your behaviors or your approach are not
Mhm.
great for what we're trying to accomplish here.
Right.
And maybe it is time that we talk about, career path and direction,
Exactly.
or knock that shit off. At the end of the day,
Exactly.
sometimes that is,
Sometimes you just have to. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and I think that's hard, especially for
Yeah.
managers or for bosses, especially because it can be a very challenging, scary conversation. But
Yep.
what's the alternative, right? You're either leaving somebody in there that's creating
Exactly.
conflict for your team, or you're causing yourself more stress because you really have to go back and you have to like
Yep.
recheck their work, or you have to look to make sure
Exactly.
that they're following through on their commitments and doing things that they're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
And if you're having to do that, or you're having to do the work,
Yep.
for them, what value have you really given yourself if you
Have
brought them on board? And what value do you have
true.
to the company by keeping them, right? So in a lot of
That's
cases, I
true.
think having those conversations early and often can be really
Mhm.
critical and important, because sometimes, again, kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt, sometimes they oversell themselves. Sometimes they
Yep.
are maybe got a little bit overzealous about what they
Yep.
committed to on a project or
Yeah.
their deliverable. And that's human nature. You want to impress.
It
And so
is.
sometimes we take on more things, but you have to figure out a way to have that communication so that they recognize what the expectations are going
Yep.
forward and why. And I
No,
think
I agree, Steve. That's
that's
really
key.
I think that that's really key. The other thing that I'm just thinking about, like some experiences and some personal experiences that I've had. Make sure, as a leader, as the boss, as the person in charge, that you are directly communicating with the person. And what I mean is, don't go via somebody. Don't go based on what your office manager is telling you. Don't go based on, because I'm telling you, if they're, it's human nature as well. If they've got ulterior motives, they've got some other, end in sight that you don't even know about. They could be speaking on behalf of somebody and telling you a lot of things that are half truths or maybe
Yeah,
not
yeah.
even. So,
That's a great reminder. And
yeah.
it's funny because this is hard grained in us as well. At the end of the
Mhm.
day, we're all human, and
Yeah.
the business of human connection is challenging because
Yes.
it's we are always trying to preserve and survive. And a
Yeah.
lot of times people do things purely out of that motivation without thinking
Yeah.
through the consequences. They'll do or say things that maybe in a different set of circumstances may not have done that.
Yeah.
And especially when there's a weakness within a team, you often find that, oh my God, once somebody is, ballsy enough to raise the flag on it, then it's funny how many people start to pick on it in the modern day
Exactly.
schoolyard, of bullying around that process. And I'm not saying it like, you're picking on that person necessarily, but
Right.
now everybody obsesses over that one thing that the person does. And so sometimes that also can be a challenge and important for a leader to be able to say, look, I acknowledge it. I understand it. So
Hmm.
can it be fixed? Right.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
can, them, missing their last two project assignments, can we overcome that mistrust of the
Hmm.
third to hand them and give them the shot? Well, part of that is, hey, you've got to have that conversation up front. Hey, you didn't
Yep.
quite deliver the last time. It's not the first time here. This is, I'm not trying to tell you, hey, the end is near if you don't deliver on this project as well as I expect, but I do
Right.
expect a better performance, right? I do
Yep.
expect things to have a different outcome, and a reliability factor, is important to me. And so I need to be able to count on you
Yeah.
to get the job done before you. And I think as it relates to teams, those team dynamics can be real challenging because once people figure it
Again.
out, like, ooh, now it's real tough for people to actually have that conversation and
Yeah.
give other people a chance to recreate or reestablish the opportunity to build trust.
Yeah. I think that that's really important.
Awesome.
Mm.
Miss Williams has this great one. Know your worth in all aspects of your life. Don't sell yourself short. Likewise, don't pump your ego. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a tough one.
Absolutely. That's a
Yeah.
tough one, but
That is a really
absolutely
tough
true.
one. Yeah, and especially in a
Yeah.
situation where you're trying to better yourself within an
Yeah.
organization or in the eyes of the boss or the
Yeah.
environment that you're in or whatever. The ego is a real, it's a dangerous thing. It likes to play a lot of mind games with you.
It really does. I mean, it's funny, Steve, because it's a necessary thing. We need our egos, but we need to keep everything else in balance with our ego. Once we start letting
Absolutely.
the ego and the mind running the boat, I mean, just
Oof.
really like yeah, forget about it.
Well, we could definitely talk hours on this topic, but
Yeah.
we may revisit it at some juncture because I
Yeah.
think it is so great. But Asha, why don't you tell people how they can learn more about your work and what you're doing, how they might find an avenue to maybe experience, one, find out about your book, also experience the work and the great product offerings that you have out there.
Yeah, so people can find me at my website, theprasadmethod.com, and you can reach out to me there. You can see the work that I'm doing on there, find out. I've got some courses online. I've got a lot of different ways that people can work with me, and you can reach out to me on pretty much Facebook, Instagram, or email, pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, and
So,
Asha has this great Monday mindful moment newsletter that
yeah,
goes out
thank
that
you.
is, it will get you thinking and set you in the right mindset for the entire week. And so highly recommend you check out theprasadmethod.com and get signed up for that
Thank
because
you.
it is a difference maker. I promise you.
Thanks, Steve.
And real quickly, how do people, if they, topics like this came from that conversation that you had, right? These conversations generally come from feedback that we get from people that are tuning in, listening to our podcast, which we are so grateful for. And obviously these live streams have been great as well for people to tune in and kind of see the people behind the voices that they hear on the podcast. But how could they learn more about us and what we're doing relative to, or get topics in front of us, that we might want to maybe cover in the future?
So definitely, what, Steve, people can go to our website, conversationwithashaandsteve.com, and email us from there, or reach out to us on Facebook, drop a comment in the comment box, any way to, and of course, Steve, people can reach out to us individually at our own individual websites and emails and everything like that, if there are things that are coming up that you would like for us to discuss. And definitely, Steve, how can people contact you and find out about, and definitely need to tell people about your third edition.
The third edition of The Ripple Effect is out now. It's on Amazon. It is now out on Audible. A lot of people have asked about that.
So awesome.
So you can not only read the book, you can also get it on my website, ripplecentral.com. And you can find me on most social platforms at RippleOn is my handle. That's generally a great way for you to plug into the work that I'm doing through the Ripple and the concept of connection. So, would love for you to follow us on, follow both Asha and I on Twitter, Instagram. Check out conversationswithashaandsteve.com. We've got some programs that'll be coming out later this year, so you'll want to get on our email list so that you're brought up to speed on those things. And we're just grateful that you tuned in today. We appreciate everything that you guys do, all the comments, all the great positive feedback that we get, both on our podcast as well as on the live streams or the replays, if you happen to be catching that on a replay. So thank you for tuning in, however you came to find us today. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody joining in. And Steve, it was great to talk about this. I think we might have to revisit this one again. I do too. Yeah, it's there's so many different angles to the trust topic that there's so many other things that I'm sure that we didn't touch on that we could have additional conversations on. It would be a lot of fun in the future for sure. So you take care. Have a great rest of your Friday and enjoy your weekend. Thank you. You too. We'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much. Okay.